Hi Dave, how's it going? Good to see you. We have this little list of things that we're doing. Last week we worked on some community characters. I thought that'd be nice and chill today. We've done Met's kitty character, and we were working on Vagabond's homeless beggar character last time. And Met's is done. Vagabonds is almost done, but not quite. Haven't put Vagabonds into stream avatars yet. Still a few things to sort out. And their lore bibles have to go up to their lore bible articles, as well as all the world building articles as well from what we was doing before my house move. And that's there as one of the tasks to do. But I thought a cool thing we could do is this one this week, place names. If you looked at the stream title, you'll already know that that's what today's plan is, because it's right there in capital letters. Any plans for the week to come? And how are you, Rose Daver asks. Just hopefully a nice easy one, fingers crossed, with not much disruptions. That's all I'm hoping for these days. Just to get through the day with peace and quiet. No random strange men in the house, or no banging from any jobs going on around the house or in the garden. We had fences put up last week, and obviously my new flooring as well, so it's a bit of a... But I think it's gonna be quiet for the next few weeks, but it'll probably get a bit noisy again after that, because our kitchen's gonna be done. No, but at least the kitchen will look pretty once it's done. So, place names, how fun is that, folks? We haven't really done a place names stream for a long time. The last time we did place names was probably in the first month we ever did Raindrop Chronicles, because we thought of the name of Everbloom Forest and Lakefall and a few of the little region areas around there, but we haven't done anything like that since. And I've learnt an awful lot about place names since then and how it all works. I was watching a few world building videos over the weekend on that, so it's going to be fun to talk about that in a minute. Also, I'm excited to see what you guys might come up with, because I think this will be a good collaboration stream potentially. And we did do a title stream just before Christmas, the end of last year. We thought the name Roots and Rumours, didn't we? So we sort of have worked with coming up with cool words that sound cool together recently with that. And so this is kind of going to be a little bit similar. There's going to be a technique to how we're going to come up with some cool names, and we'll see what we come up with. This might not be done and over with in one stream. It might be, or it might not. We'll see. Let's just see how it goes today. Hope it's all enjoyable talk next time. Hopefully, yeah, you too, Rod. Hope you have a good breakfast, because you usually have breakfast, don't you, when I'm streaming. So I'm going to make a new Google Doc for us today. So let me get that ready. Also, actually, yeah, before we begin properly, I'll put a quick live announcement in the World Anvil Discord, because I like to do that, especially when we have world building streams. Can't find the Anvil streams. There we go. We're coming up with cool place names today. Come join the fun. If you like the sound of that, which I have to put the awesome. So, a brand new document. place names, and let's zoom in so we get a proper view of this. And I think I should be a little bit more specific on what this place name is that we're going to name, because obviously it's not Everbloom, Forest or Lightfall, because that's already named. It's this. The countries, the continents, and like the world map as a whole, I guess. Maybe not the name of the world just yet, but definitely considering the names of some of the bigger regions as a whole. Because Everbloom and Lightfall is like one small place in the world. But I've been wanting to start considering names of the actual country that we're in currently, and the other country, and things like that. So let's get our map up. Actually, can't remember where that is. So give me a minute just to find it. It's somewhere in my Raindrop Chronicles folder. It's Tuesday, and you know what that means. Weekly reset on Final Fantasy XIV. Oh yes, I do. Even though I haven't played Final Fantasy XIV in a long time, I know very well that Tuesday was the day. It's always a good day. It's good to see you still playing that day, Eva. You're having fun. I know the new expansion's on the way to being released, if it hasn't been already. I'm sure at some point I'll start up again. It's a difficult time right now because of all the distractions, and I know that if I was playing Final Fantasy XIV right now and I was in the middle of a dungeon or a trial, I'd probably get called, and then everyone would die and I'd die. It would be a disaster. But I am looking forward to when things get a bit more quiet, and I'll be able to get back into that. Right, so I have got the map, I've found it. Let's get paint up so we can all see it first of all. Oh, I should probably get the one up that has the Pantheon Legend Monument statues there, because that gives us a bit more information. So let me get that one up. Should be around somewhere as well. The Unnamed World of Raindrop Chronicles. I can't find the one we're after, damn it. Let me see. Might be a PSD file. The one. Unless it's this one. Okay, I found it. Awesome. So I've got to just open it in paint. Countries A, would you rather have the places have again, like Britain, the name of an island, or names dependent of the cultures there, like England? Well, that's the interesting one, isn't it? Because there is a reason why places are named the way they are. Like England is named after the fact that it's after Anglo-Saxons, isn't it? It's like a slightly differentiated version of that. Instead of Ang, it's Eng. I was watching a video, and it's quite interesting to find out why places are named the way they are, and how they change and evolve over the years. But it usually always starts from being named after the people that originally lived there, like the ruler of that place, or some sort of landmark or something that makes that place unique. Or all the history, the historical event as well. Swooning over Elmet's out, let's be real, is he even still around? Like, you know, that's the reason why I'm having a bit of a break from Final Fantasy 14, because if Emmett was still around, I'd be all over it. But it'd be too good to be true. I mean, obviously, you'd be spoiling it for me if you reveal. But I'm not going to get my hopes up. Sneaks in another vote to name the world partner. It's a good one, Dave. Like when we finally get round to naming the world, that's going to be a contender for sure. It's interesting because raindrops, of course, is the currency, and that wasn't set in stone until more recent years. It was probably some other like thing that was the currency before raindrops. But imagine if they were like, yeah, we've totally got to have raindrops as a currency because, you know, raindrop partner is raindrop backwards. It was meant to be. That then people could easily be sort of taken in by the idea of changing the currency because of that. Could be numerous reasons, but it's a strong contender. You know, I can't tell you that. I think that means he's there, but I'm not getting my hopes up, David. I'm not. I can't. But one day I will be playing it. Okay, so here's our map. So this one's got a bit more info on it because we started plotting. These little circles, these coloured circles here are the monuments of the 6 legends of the pantheon, or as simplified as gods, basically. There's 6 of them, and the plan was to have their monuments regional, you know, have them spread over the world, so there's a different one that's sort of predominantly worshipped in each area and spread out. So looking at things like that and the race of each of these could give us a lot of insight into the history of these places, and perhaps influence what we end up naming the places if we consider who are the strong, the rulers of that time or important people of the past. So that's something to think about. So, but looking at the map as a whole, one thing we do know, I think I need to get a simplified version of this map up as well. One that doesn't have all the mess on it, and all the like episodes. Yeah, this one's a nice tidy one. Where is it? Because that isn't showing on the stream. I've just got the messy one up. So that's the messy one. Yeah, I'll have to manually switch between them. I think this is the tidy one, and it's a lot easier to see the zones on the tidy one. Hi Van, how are you doing? It's good to see you. How are things going? We're naming things today, countries, the continent. Just having a think about things like that. I thought it'd be fun and creative as to mull over things, smush words together and give, like, you know, meaning to the places, because I'm a fan whatever we decide to name the countries and the regions after, something that obviously links to the lore, like, of the world, but something that makes sense, that it came to be that word, but also something simple enough and easy enough to pronounce as well. I'm not just saying that because I struggle with pronunciation, but you know, that it tends to be more memorable if it's not something like blah 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 blah, blah, like something that's easy enough to sort of to remember, especially as the name of a country. But like smaller place names can be a bit more longer and more words in them sometimes, but country names tend to be just one word, right? Okay, so So because of that, because I'm very fond of whatever we're going to call them to link with the world itself that we're building and its lore, that's why I've got this map up right now, so we can sort of have a little bit of insight into it and review it before we jump into smushing some words together to create a bunch of names. We're probably going to just make a big list of name ideas and then shortlist and do all that kind of thing, and then maybe put a poll up at the end for the shortlisted ones. All depends how it goes. You never know, we could just fall in love with just one of them and then just stick with that. But we'll play it by ear today and see how it goes. Oh, cool, yay! So, I've got the simple map up at the moment, the one that doesn't have the episode plan and all the god statues on. This is just the plain old map. Oh no, hang on. I've lost the toolbar. There we go, I've got it now. So, let's get a brush up or a square or something. Let's make the line thicker. How I can make it super thick, but I mean, this has become even more apparent as we've been fleshing out the lore and world even more, but we clearly have two different, very different places in the world, which I just made with this square here, folks. At the moment we're just calling east side and west side. That's kind of what we've been calling it for the last few weeks. When we talk about that we're currently in the west side, that Territorio and the king and the government are based in the east, sorry, not the west. This is the west and this is the east. So let's just get that up now in bigger letters so that this will probably get a bit messy today. I'm going to just maybe write a bunch of notes down on this, and then we'll move to a Google Doc. So yeah, we got the east, and then we've got the west, which is very different. Obviously we're currently in Evelyn Forest, which is part of the east side of the world. The capital is here. That's where Territorio and King Dolus are based, and not far from us. The plan is for us to sort of, this is first half of the saga and this is second half of the saga. We'll slowly move east as our journey takes us there. There's some real endgame zones around here. You know, when you look at the corrupted and subduction zone, and it's more like under rule. The east is it's more medieval inspired, more picturesque, more scenic, beautiful large mountains, and you know, a bit like Europe. You know, like very scenic and more traditional, more old. And this side here is different. It's more harsh, more deserted, probably slightly less populated, because we've got the desert, the jungle, the badlands, the wasteland, the urban zone. It's a lot more gritty in this side of the world, which is another reason why it suits endgame, mid-endgame more than this side. But yes, and the key thing as well is that there's a large city in each. So we have we get like a little circle to symbolise these cities. Yeah, there we go. So the first big city is here. That's where the government is. We haven't named it that yet. We're probably not going to prioritise naming the cities at this point in time. It's kind of keyed on keeping that a little bit for later maybe. But yeah, the bigger things like the continents. Why have I named that east? I'm obviously not concentrating. There we go, west. But you know, if ideas come forward for names of the cities, I wouldn't say no. I'd still make a note of that. And then the other cities here. And they're really the two populated zones in the game right now. I mean, the other places have people living there too. And there'll be little smaller towns and settlements in these zones, in groups that hang together. But obviously the more populated, larger parts of the world are where I've put the big circles. If these are two separate countries, I mean, this is all one continent. But if these are two separate countries on this one continent, then this is the capital city of this one, and this is the capital city of this one. They're both capital cities in their own country. And obviously we've got the floating cloud zone as well, but that's its own separate floating island that you could say is independent from what's going on here. That is a city in itself too, so that's probably worthy of putting a circle there too, but it's independent. It's not, I guess you could say it could be part of the West country. That's up for debate, but it could also be independent to us, and make it its own separate continent, a third continent. Now we've just broken that down. I'm not sure, I'm thinking could it be broken down even more? I mean, we don't necessarily have to do that. We could just keep it as these two as the countries. But when we think about the kingdom as a whole and the fact that, you know, the government monarchy are based here in the Highlands, they're like in a really good spot. They're in the centre of all these like terrains, and it's quite good because there's a mixture. You've got the forest, you've got the snow, the mountains, the swamp, the beach, the farmland. That's a really good spot for them. And they're getting a ton of resources being in the middle of all that. And they probably have some sort of control over each of these and the little towns that are there. Everbloom Forest probably has a mayor living there, and I'm sure he somewhat answers to Trade Horio and Dolos. I mean, Everbloom, we've sort of debated that there could be a bit more isolated and independent, but it would kind of be a bit difficult for them if they were, because they probably want to have resources from the farmland as well, and it's probably a bit difficult at the moment with things coming to life in the forest, so the trade routes probably aren't as common, but they certainly would value that. And up here, I mean, this area here, let's get a square again. I mean, it depends what we want to do, because right now this is just two countries. We could still split this further so there's two countries in each, but I don't know yet. I kind of like just the two, but if we want to, like, need a thicker brush because it's not standing out when I have a thin line. I'll just do shapes, it's easier. We could even do that so that there's split into quarters. And actually, the more I'm thinking of it, it actually could work, and I'll tell you why in a minute. It's very messy right now. Can't make heads nor tails out of this. Could have probably done it in Photoshop and it would have been a bit easier. Okay, right, let me just get some notes up from the last stream, because there was something Matt said, not last week but the week before, about when I mentioned country names, so let me just review that. Right, awesome. Right, so I'm going to just move off the map just temporarily. Now I've split those areas into what will be the countries. And get our Google Doc up again. Place names, exclamation mark. So, just copy and paste the text because I like this font. Today we're going to think of name ideas for the countries in the world. Raindrop Chronicles. Woo! Yeah, I get excited about naming things. I remember when we named Roots and Rooms, I got really excited. It was one of my favourite streams when we did the naming for the title of episode 1. Because it kind of just starts to make the world feel a bit more real as well. And you start to slowly think of names of things. So I'm going to write down, because I've been researching, I've been reading a lot about this kind of thing. I watched 2 world building videos on place names over the weekend. And there's a few interesting things that I found out about how places get named and how they become the names they are. So I'm going to put that down, but I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. So place names are usually named after a person, ruler who once lived there, or the people. It's not always just one person, sometimes it's the people in general, like England, be named after the Anglo-Saxons. So the people or a ruler who once lived there. And the other one is a general description of the land, or specific. And I think this could go in the same one because it's to do with landscapes and geography, or a specific feature of the land, or a historical, can't spell historical. There, is that right? It's got an underlined historical event. There we go. Like an important historical event. Like, for example, the country in the east becoming like the land of the free, or land for artistic people back in the day. Or, you know, something along that line, something that changed and what they know it as now. Hi, intelligent history, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Windstone, Moist Mound. Interesting. Yeah, we will be word mashing today because word mashing is kind of a thing, a technique involved with naming places, and it that kind of happened in real life too in our world, because do you guys, I mean, there's a place that used to be called this. Found out this. Let's make this bigger. That's what it was called many years ago in our world. And today it is Boston. I should probably put that like that. Because over time, like, you know, places change. People, it becomes simpler and more memorable, and people remove letters and mispronounce words, and it becomes something else entirely over time, and usually something shorter, of course, and you know, and all that is that and that. The first part of it, the first letters of each word, and that's Boston. So yeah, that's why we'll be doing word mashing too, because that's kind of how it works in reality as well when it comes to place names, what they become, what they used to be, and what they became today. Hi Matt, how are things going? And hi Bob as well, how are you today? I want Smike's, I can't recommend it, lol. Whiscrift. I'm intrigued, like, because you guys are coming up with names already, which I'm really intrigued by now. I'm intrigued what your technique is, folks, like, because obviously everybody's got one, everybody has their own individual techniques. And I'm sort of going by the way I'm sort of seeing it, is how, like, you know, how things are in real life and at the real world, and so it sort of makes sense and is realistic. Is there any more examples I can give? I mean, the Bartov stone is just one of them, and there was a couple, I swear there was another. I mean, it's, the stone thing is an interesting one, because if I just highlight that, stone connects with the whole general description of land thing. And Boltov, I'm assuming that's a name of a person. So let's highlight that so we can make the connection. So usually it starts with a person name, then a specific feature of land that it's really sort of, that's important there. I'm going to Google Boltov actually, just to, I'm probably saying the name wrong, knowing me, but you know what I mean. I'm going to Google it and remind myself who they were. There's a St. Bartov's church still. So yes, it's a person. He died around 680. So yeah, really interesting things there. I mean, another one is Newcastle, which is literally just Newcastle in one word today. But obviously, again, we've got the place name, like the landmark name, with it being a castle. Yeah, I thought we could do a similar technique rather than just make up random words that sound nice, but actually sort of mash some words together. We'll come up with we'll write a massive list of mashed words that connect with the places that we've got. And then we'll probably do a short list or something. And let's catch up with chat. So are we trying to name the 2 nations? Yeah, let me get my map up again, folks. I just wanted to write down a technique and how we're going to do this today. But now let's get the map up. So this is a very rough world map we've got, folks. I'm going to catch up with chat in a sec because I see that you've said a lot and I'm very intrigued. But here's the map. We've got east side and west side at the moment. That is literally all we call it right now, which is why I'm very keen on thinking of an actual country name for them so we can feel a little bit more immersed rather than call it the east and the west all the time. And there is clearly 2 different nations here, 2 different countries that are very separate from one another, and that's kind of just started to happen naturally as we've had our world building streams. We've found that this place in the west feels very separate from this place in the east, almost like they're 2 different countries, right? So that's what they've become. The landmarks and the way the land is for each is very different as well. This is far more scenic, more undisturbed, more under rule. There's a government that control this area. It's more picturesque, scenic. This area is more gritty, more harsh, barren, barbaric, and probably it's not as under rule. People are probably free a little bit more in this side of the world. So I'm going to catch up with chat now. Still yonder dry tard mine. Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a good thing, Bob, because that's like a simplified version of the first word, which I couldn't even pronounce, which is exactly what you do. It usually started off as a word that's far more complex and longer and hard to pronounce. And then over time becomes a simplified version, which the new people living there, the new people that migrated there have started to call it for the last couple of centuries or however long. Don't forget interesting cultural architectural markers. Baton Rouge red stick totem pole covered in blood as a war marker and my person. Hi Eld, how you doing? Someone's idea of a joke, see hell. Yeah, it's such a complex thing as well, when it comes to place names. It's something you could probably research forever and ever. So I'm trying to do it in the most simplified way, but in a way that's still going to make us come up with some realistic country names. Translation or other lack of translation or literal meaning is also a big source of name distortions. A good example of this is so many rivers are named after the world's river in different languages. Yeah, different languages is another beast in itself, isn't it? Because they also affect what place names are named after. I mean, in Raindrop Chronicles, we don't have different languages, but we do have, and I'm going to write this down now, different ways that the people were named of the old ages. So elves, their name ended with Sa. Fae names end with a Da. Kit, Ka and Walka is a car, which is apparent because it's right there. The car ends with both. They're sort of were part of the Kitsune. They're the ancestors of them. And then we've got the Dra, which are the dragons, the reptile race, the ancestors of actual dragons. And I suppose we could have Dra itself as a whole, but we could also shorten that to Ra to avoid it being too similar to the Fae. and that keeps them all like a 2-letter word that starts in a different letter for each, and all ending in A, so it's neat and tidy that way. And they're like so I mean, this is something else to consider when we start mashing words together, right? We'll put that to the side for the moment, but because language was brought up, I wanted to sort of make note of that. It's a bit, we won't think of it just yet, but when it comes to sort of coming up with some words, we might want to start to add these to the words if it was a highly populated elven area or whatever, or fae or drow. So Met mentioned something about that last week actually, so I have made a note of that, Met, so I'll be noting that down in a sec about where most of the elves live, etc. And we could consider that. I think it's worthy of considering that, because people who once lived there, or the people that first were living there and sort of populated the area, is sort of a common way that countries' names came to be. So it's definitely worthy of thinking of that. And my personal favourite, someone's idea of a joke, so I've already read that bit. And yeah, name distortions as well, as you say, lack of translation. Also, like, you know, missing words is something that can happen naturally because of some cultures and people not saying certain letters or not pronouncing them as much. So that's something to think about too. You guys are coming up with so many funny ones. And I think we might need to consider what people named the nations. Yeah, so we will think of that first, especially, I think we'll move on to that next actually, because that's going to be the first step. We can't mash words together without knowing what they were seen as in the beginning, right? So we'll do that first. Word mashing is the second step, but the first step will be coming up with a simple phrase with between 2 and 4 letters, maybe a simple phrase like stone on a hill, or anything just very descriptive like bottle stone or something, or Newcastle. And then the step after that is sort of simplifying the word to the country name that it's known as today or whatever. Hello, East Side or West Side? Yes. Hi, Zayas. How you doing, Zayas? I live in a former French area. Names are actually very commonly reused in other areas of the country. So it's always fun seeing how the pronunciations and actual name spellings are mutate from the original French in other places. It is interesting. Like, this is something I've recently started learning about. Like, we had a place name stream back in 2019. When we were naming things very casually, but back then I was all new to that, and I always told myself, I'm terrible at naming places because I don't know how to come up with good names for anything. But now I sort of understand the technique involved with coming up with place names, and it's kind of fascinating. Mega Juice Mountain. Some of these names are very silly but fun. King Dollar's doing a cool skateboard trick. East Side rules. See you in my car, Mr. Tree Lava Lamp as a zone. Can you guys see the map? Is that what's up at the moment? Because I can see the Google Doc up at the moment. But here's the map. We'll get it. We'll switch between the two today, because we'll be looking at the map to sort of get some inspiration and ideas each of the places, and we'll also be moving here and got Doc to write down some notes and name ideas. Oh gosh, I'd never even be able to begin pronouncing that one out. You might have to consider that the West Side might not originally look like it does now, so the nation's name might not reflect how they... Yeah, good point, Van, and I think that's going to be important to consider too. We might need to start to get our heads together and think of what it once could have been. I mean, things have changed in the East. We already sort of have an idea that this place here, what it looks like now, which is very barren and you know, gritty and kind of somewhere you wouldn't want to go. But actually back in the day was a safe haven. It's now like a dirty urban zone where criminals hang out, but back in the day it was a safe haven for people who wanted to follow their dreams. And it sort of evolved into this place, and it sort of lost its way because it isn't ruled by anybody, but at heart that really inspiring message is there in its history, and maybe we can reform it in the game. Maybe it can be a quest at some point, who knows. But things like that is important for sure, because places don't always stay the same. So knowing that about the West, that it's this now, but it used to be this land of the free and this really artistic haven, is something that will probably inspire the name that it is, even though it looks nothing like that now. And same with the East. We haven't really thought too much in depth about what that used to be once upon a time, but that's something to think about too. Who lives in the East? The people. Well, basically, the place in the East is under the rule of the main government of the game. The king, the prime minister are based here in the Highlands, where this big white circle is, and all these little regions bordering it have got smaller towns and settlements, but the big city is here in the middle of them all. And it's far more medieval inspired, more scenic, more picturesque. I mean, you've got these beautiful mountains and forests and trees, and it's definitely got the whole European vibes more than what we've got here on the West. The West is the opposite. It's more of an anarchy. There's probably criminal factions and wanderers and people who generally are not interested in the life that's here. They probably are more free and just want to be left alone. So there is another city here that's started to come about. We've already sort of started developing the history of this city. Like I said, it was a safe haven once upon a time. People went there to escape from the war happening in the East, and it was all very inspiring, but it's sort of lost its way over the years and become like this gritty criminal haven now. That's the main difference between the two countries. And it was all one continent several weeks back, but then it became clearer over time that these are two very, very distinct places here, and they're worthy of being their own country. This being the capital of this country, and this being the capital of this country. And then we've got the floating island here, which could be a third country. It could be an independent one because it's a floating island, so it's not really part of what's going on here. I would think the Drake names would favour the S and the K sounds. Yeah, well, we've got to be careful because we don't want the names of the diff races to sound too similar, considering we've already established these ones, and having them be as distinct as possible and is perfect, really. And I suppose you could say raw, dragons say raw, don't they? Silly but true, and just taking that one. So, but yes, okay. So Thailand is like island but burned to the ground. Yep. You guys are coming up with so much going on. I'm surprised. I didn't expect so many names coming up when we haven't even started yet. It's great. Vowel and consonant slip is a useful one. North Norse, the result of consonant getting softer and syllables going missing. It's all very interesting, isn't it, guys? I hope you'll still be here hanging out when we actually start to do the word mashing, because it seems you folks really know your stuff on this. And we might come up with some really cool names together. Thank you for the follow, by the way. I appreciate it. Hi, the human robot. How you doing? So, what age were the countries named, and was one named long before the other? That's a good point to bring up as well, because we did recently start writing the whole timeline of the world from the history of the beginning of the creation to the present day. And we've got this massive timeline of all the different ages through time now. So, I mean, at its most simplest, I guess I see whatever the country name is was really the ones who was the rulers and had the most power in the area in the early ages. The age itself is a question mark, but I remember you saying, Met, and just to note this down, can we get some big letters here? You said that you saw the elves, so we'll put elves, the Safa elves, in the east, because that's where the monument is, the elf monument. So I'm actually gonna put that one down here at the southeast, because that's where the elven monument is. And I definitely wouldn't see it as impossible for the elves to have lived in Everbloom for quite a long time, for quite a number of centuries, even thousands of years even, back in the day. Because it definitely seems like the Fae populated this particular area, and they might have wanted their own. We know that Yorosar lived there and learned herbalism there, and eventually his monument became the tree, the Lightfall tree, and so we also know the tree was planted here 10,000 years ago, so probably by the elves. Not saying that Fae didn't live here either. They totally could have lived together as one, the both races, but maybe it was predominantly elven, if we want to consider that, because if we're going to start naming, we're going to have to be influenced by one over the other, and especially because we already established the Fae being more for this one here. And I'm putting, these are the words because that's kind of the language that they've become. So Sar is elven, Dar is Fae, and Kar is beast, the Walker and the Kitka. And I mean, I'm going to just pop that there because I think the dragons are going to be more here, because we have already established that, I don't know why that's gone down there. We've already established that the dragon monument is going to be in the desert, and it's been very strongly considered that the desert zones and this south part of the west side is highly populated by dragon. And we know that they did recently move to Everbloom in recent years, but probably well after the elves were there, talking thousands of years after. The Dra have only lived in Everbloom for the last, was it 100 years or so? Can't remember the exact number, and now it's humans that live there. So looking at it there, just roughly putting a sort of guide of the races of the world, we've got a very fair even split there, and we've got 4 different places, 2 on each side, which I did think maybe we could split in the west into 2 halves, so we've got a south and north half, and the east into 2 halves, so we've got a north and south half. If we want to have 4 countries instead of 2, that's up to us. And then the Dar, I suppose, could be this whole part, including the subduction zone as well. So just early thoughts here. And then, of course, when we come into naming our countries, we can consider these two-lettered words when we start to word mush together, mush some words together if we want to give it a language connection with each of those races that were very prominent. So I'm going to catch up with chat first before I carry on rambling, because you guys are probably saying some stuff. Human Robot said, what type of RPG game are you working on, if you don't mind me asking? I'm going to put the website for you in chat, Human Robot, or anyone else hanging out. The raindroprpg.com. Feel free to have a little look. It's got some new screenshots there of a new tile set that I've been working on, but it's a very base foundation of the tile set at the moment. I haven't shown it off in social media yet. Because it's still at its very early foundation, but there's going to be more detail added over time, and there's an FAQ on there, and there's some devlogs on there as well, so feel free to have a look there if you're curious. Al says, yeah, nice old neighbourhoods eventually become stable but no longer attractive areas, and eventually fall even further into disrepair, so King's Home becomes King's Shell. Yeah. And there's actually entire city plan specialisation focus on studying the cycle of new, old, derelict, cheap, rebuilt. Happens each cycle, it's harder to rebuild the area. Eld knows their stuff. And totally off topic, but what little moving figures for? Hi Lafanta, how you doing? Welcome to the stream. The moving figures is a tool called Stream Avatars, folks, and I think it's an extension. If you Google Stream Avatars, you'll find the website, and that's what I'm using to get them to come up. The characters themselves are actual characters in the game that I'm making, but you can get your own, like for your own stream if you want, folks. It's a pretty cool tool. And so ironic names where horrible bad areas are named really posh names is so common it's not even funny anymore. Yeah, yeah. And hi Rose, hi Rav, how you doing? So good to see you. And give her a moment, she focused on one question or comment at a time for a while, otherwise we accidentally derail her constantly. Yeah, especially usually so we can not get off track or derail us as we talk about something. But I always try and I do always catch up with chat. I try my best to anyway, eventually, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes after I've finished speaking. And lizard folk light sunlight, yeah. Well, we're gonna have a stream. Not if it's not this week or next week, it's gonna be sometime this month. We're gonna have a stream where we talk about the biology and all that sort of thing with the races in the game soon, so we can start to really develop them further. And Rav said, what is Rakar and Sar? That is let's just make it a bit clearer to folks coming in, because it is a bit of a mystery to some folks probably. So I'm going to put in brackets what they are, but the Dark Rakar and Sar is basically an old naming convention and I suppose you could say language of the old ages, the people back then. So the Fae called themselves Dar. The elves called themselves Sar, because it's not so popular in the modern days. Like back now, elves in the present day just have normal names like Bob. Well, maybe not Bob, but you know what I mean. But back in the day, they had names like Yorasar, Haladar, and it was definitely a lot more exotic sounding. And I suppose that gives it helps give the whole impression of the world it was a different time back then, and things have evolved. And I'm a fan of that when things back in history are different to how they are now. So I'm sort of like considering these things for when the naming comes, just so we don't forget, because it might tie in quite well for all we know when we start mushing some words together. And Van already answered my question, I see. Great, you guys are awesome. Thanks for helping chat when I'm slow. So the car area is cold, very alliterative sounding. Yeah, so I'm thinking I've just put the car there because, these are quite big now. There we go. A walker and kicker, because the beast races, the furry beast races, need a home, and this north part in the east was the only one that was a blank, and I think they could easily be very fitting with the snow. They're furry. It's cold here, and to me it makes sense that the fur covered races, the doggos and the kitties, would quite enjoy living in the colder climate and desert where it's probably warm. I mean, it depends all on the reptile, because deserts in itself, reptiles totally make sense. Jungle, some might prefer the life of a jungle where there's more a water source and there's more shelter, but others might quite like the harsh desert world. Plus it keeps them away from other people, because humans and fae and owls probably wouldn't like living in the desert, but to them it's perfect for them because it keeps them away from everybody else. It's nice and free and isolated. So we'll put the draw there. The draw is the new name for the reptile race, folks. It's a shortened form of dragon, so it's great. There we go. So I'll put in brackets what the race is for those. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Muffin Mantra. How are you doing today? It's awesome to see you. How was your weekend? Robert saw that really fits. I know, that's quite funny, isn't it? I mean, I love the names we've got. Like Yorasar just flows so nicely together, and then you've got Bob Sar, Robert, John Sar. It would be really funny. But okay, so now we've got that. We could clearly have 4 different countries, with the floating cloud zone being part of this area. But if that's the case, maybe these should be part of that one, just so we don't have 2 capital cities in the same country. I really wish we had better highlighters here, because it's going to get very confusing. What countries what. Maybe I should just separate them, make this a bit bigger for now, just so we can clearly see the difference. Also, I'm going to move all these underground ones lower for now. Actually delete them for now. I'm not going to save over. I'm going to make a whole new paint file for this, because this is a messy one. Just so I don't save over the other one, because that would be bad. Okay, it's saving. So, just to make it a bit clearer, the separation marks and what countries are in which, what regions are in which, I'm going to just do this. Now we got half here, so let's just set in stone which one belongs where. The salt flats, it's very mysterious what on earth that place even is right now, but which one would it fit best with? Maybe here for now, but I think we need more. The Floating Cloud Zone is quite a large place in itself, so I'm very inclined to keep this section here rather than make it part the Floating Cloud Zone being its own dependent nation for the Fae, with maybe these 2 nearby mysterious zones as part of it, as how it is. So maybe that is perfectly fine. So what do you guys think? Let's catch up with chat. Okay, so I think I've all caught up. We're all good. It's all a bit messy, so let me just get rid of all these messy lines. Accidentally chopped off things I shouldn't have, but never mind. We know what's what. And this way, the cool thing about having it like this, I hope we can all see properly. I think some of it's getting chopped off, which is unfortunate, but I wanted to make enough space so we could see the difference. Let me just, so we don't have it chopped off, I'm just going to move it across a bit more because I don't know if that's the best view. Eventually all this will go on the Law Bible though, so you'll get to see it looking pretty. This is very rough. Okay, so now we've done that, I'm going to just delete east and west temporarily, and we'll call it north west now for this one. And then we've got southwest for this one. I'll give this another colour. And this is northeast. And this is southeast. Right, so this is cool. I think this is a really good split and a good way to divide them into countries, because we've got elves here and we've got one capital city. Well, there's only one, yeah. And then we've got the southwest, which has a capital city, and that's the draw. And we got a city here for this one, so that's great, a big city in each, except for this one. This is the only one lacking a city, so that gives us the option to potentially create a capital city for this one still at some point in time. It doesn't necessarily need to have a capital city, but maybe it would make sense for it to if the other three have their own cities. But we could always keep it open for now. I could imagine the mountain zone potentially having a place, a big famous city, but maybe not as populated as these, but who knows. Could be anywhere, because this is a big mystery, this place to the northeast. There's not much developed there just yet. Okay, so now I've broken that down, we should probably start thinking of names, but not the simplified present day country names yet. We'll do that as our second step. We'll think of the first step first, which will be to think of a short phrase of a few words that sums up the area, its law, its history, its people who lived there first. Think of a phrase to just sum it up, its landscape, its history, all the people that lived there, and then we can start taking that phrase and shortening it into a simplified one word, and maybe adding "sar" to that word at the end. We could do a practice go first as an example, but it doesn't mean we have to end up with that as the name of the country, the practice one. But yeah, let's try a practice one. So, this place, its history, right? It's very gritty now in the present day, but in many years ago, many years before, it was more about it being free, peace, art, luxury. Not so sure about the desert being luxury. I mean, it could have been. Just because it's a desert and really gritty desert and savannah now doesn't mean it was before. I mean, I'm thinking more this actual city, because that's the most probably key place where the safe haven was built. So that's the key landmark of the southwest country. And the fact that the safe haven was there, maybe we should look for some good descriptive words that could relate to the haven. But just as an example, something really crappy. Let's get the paint one up. Now this is just a test to show you what we could end up with. So random example of a name we could come up with. So there we go. So using the south west country as an example, we'll see it as land of the free. I'm going to use that as a descriptive phrase. I'm sure we can get a lot more inspired than that with the short list we can come up with, but that's just a way to sum up what that area actually was to people back in the day. So something like that could be turned into looking at what was done with Baltoff Stone and Newcastle, where it gets shortened. Let's put this on a new page. We're running out of space. You know what I mean? It's like taking the start and just mushing them up into words that it could be. And over time, that's what would have happened. Like new people would have moved there, and it becomes a shortened word, just like the examples here did. And taking in consideration language, because that's important. What is it? It was the draw. Okay, so if we want to give it a bit of draw influence, we could try experimenting with how it looks like with raw in front of it. I mean, we could end up with some really weird and outlandish words. Some totally wouldn't even work. I'm sticking raw at the end and at the start to see what we can come up with. You know what I mean? You get some really strange. Some can work and you think, actually, that sounds really nice, and it's got historical meaning there, and it's a good, believable word for the country, because it's got the whole free, the draw influence, and the la for land all combined into one word. So that's just an example of what we could come up with, but I don't want us to limit ourselves. I mean, I just thought of the land of the free for an example, but I want to potentially think of more inspired phrases that we can sort of do this little technique with, and then make a short list. So let's catch up with chat first. The Badlands could maybe get moved up without it moving the wasteland. Well, since the elves did so much gardening, maybe it could be called Elves Garden. Interesting. So yeah, feel free to say in chat, folks, if any really cool phrases come to mind for you, because I'm going to be listing them all down very soon. What about elves versus elves? Yeah, elves versus elves. Refreelan. Yeah, we got that one down. It's all about what flows, because ultimately when we really get set on these country names, we're going to want the ones that sound really elegant together and flow nicely and memorable and easy to pronounce, rather than something that's a bit of a tongue twister. So I think I've noted that one down. So we keep calling the city a haven, it's for art, so it could be Art Haven or Creators Haven if it was renamed when the Kit Haven was made. Yeah, okay, good idea. So what we're going to do now, so I've done my example. I'm not going to delete this because you never know, we might like some of those. We'll look back at them soon. But for now, we'll just start a new page. I'm going to get the map up. So get the next 10 minutes, I'm going to just list what we've got and put it all on this page. So we've got south, east, southwest, northwest, and northeast. Cool. So let's just write what the zones are. I think it'll be good to get all this down on the page so we know what's what, and then we can underneath write some really cool phrases, and I'll check back through chat to make sure that I add any that you guys suggest. Use these as headings now. So the southeast country has Everbloom, forest. It also has the farmland zone, or farmland, we'll call them regions instead of zones. Highlands region with capital in brackets. Swamp region and beach region. Now all these regions are great because they're all the ones that border the capital, so it makes sense that they are the ones that are in the same country because they're all one kingdom. The Highland capital is right slap bang in the middle of all those. So that's kind of fallen quite nicely. And then we have the southwest country. Just noting down all the places. So jungle region, savannah region, desert region, urban region with the capital for that one, and the wasteland region. Now, mention Badlands could also always be put into the northwest if we want to bulk it up a bit. I'm totally for that if we just want to even it out a bit. So that northwest country has the floating cloud region, capital, corrupted region, which is also directly under the cloud city. It's like the spot where everything's being corrupted underneath it, so it makes sense it's part of the same country. And then we have the subduction, which is a really pretty volcanic floral place, probably. We looked at some reference images for that. Totally an endgame zone, but potentially badass and pretty at the same time. Badlands region. And then the northwest, we have the mountains region, the taiga region and snow region. Now the taiga region and snow region, you could kind of class it as both the same thing, but I'd just say that the taiga was a bit more sort of the halfway between the flatlands, where there's, you know, it's sort of got going from ever the foresty green to the snow. It's like the transition point. The salt flats region. I think that's it, right? So I've got them all there. Be interesting to have the draw town that was made into an art heaven by a kit and then grew into particular diversity. It's a good deal of history. Yeah, I think it's really coming along, and I'm really liking that I've decided to spend some, like, because today was all about coming up with names really, but it's more than just the names today. It's actually really helping us see these countries in a more clearer light as well, because we're breaking them down. It's not just about, oh, let's think of a fancy name for each one. It's all about the history of them first. We can't think of names without knowing the history and summing each of these countries up, because as much as it's fun to just come up with really nice sounding names, I recommend considering the history of each place and coming up with a name from that history, because it just gives more meaning and really helps your world overall in the end. Also, because we've done that, I don't want to forget another key point. How am I going to sum this one up? People or ruler who once lived there. So yes, people who lived there first. I guess that's a good way to sum it up. And so I'll make that a bit smaller. The southeast, let me just look at the map again to remind myself, was the elves. So, and then star in brackets. And the people who lived it here first were the Ra in brackets. And the people who lived here first were the Fae, so in brackets. And this was the Kicker and the Wildcat. In fact, that's really turned out quite nice, because it felt in the beginning that I was just stuffing the furry beach races in the northeast, because that was the one that happened to be empty and not have the monument there at this point in time. But now, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense for them to be here, because it's a colder climate, and of course the ones wearing having the fur would be there. But yes, this is predominantly the people who lived here first, or made, not necessarily first, but the ones that really held the power and influence for longest. Period of time in the area. I want that to all be on one line, so there we go. And yes, in the present day it could be very different. I mean, I still think the Drow have quite a big influence in the southwest country, and there's still there's still a lot living in the desert region, and probably around other areas as well. The Fae obviously still have influence here because they're the ones still living in the Cloud region, the capital. Potentially for sure the Kicker and Walker could still have influence here. And I suppose the southeast, the only real difference is the elves aren't really here much now, at least not in Everbloom Forest anyway, and because the Drow came to populate this area and then the humans did, and now it's become very human populated because we've got a human government and monarchy living here now. So yeah, it's definitely become more human over time, and the elves were once then, well, for whatever reason they decided to move on elsewhere, but yes, it's all pretty much making some sense here. So now I've done that, I just wanted to get everything down on one page for what they are, so it saves us having to just keep looking at the map constantly. I could even, one sec, let's see if this will work. Pardon me. Oh, it did as well. Didn't expect it to appear that large, but it's a big map, isn't it? I really don't like how Google Docs handles images. It always confuses me very much, the text wrapping business. I just want it to be nice, please. There we go, that'll do. That'll do, that's fine, we got it. So I'm gonna just put a few reference images here. Just because having that visual memory and reminder of what these regions actually are rather than just the words can be a bit more inspiring. Because what we're going to do once I've got all these images here, we're going to come up with the short list of phrases, descriptive phrases for each place, and that'll really help us come up with the country names then. Okay, so we got that. How pretty! Look at all these different nice, pretty colours. Okay, so now the southwest is, we got the jungle region. This is a fun stream, folks. And I have no idea, probably not going to come up with all the names by the end of today, are we? So chances are this stream is going to also go into this, to Thursday's stream as well. But it'll be a good job done. Let me just bold that so we know that that's our current task. And then we got lots of other cool things coming on the way. As you can see, there's a sneak preview of what's to come in future streams. I could do with adding the world building line for fleshing out the races, though I haven't added that. Got to do that still. I think we got ourselves some really appropriate reference images for these places back when we did it. it's definitely way more inspiring seeing the images than just the text, so that's going to be really cool. I'm also going to add one more to this one and get the beach one down as well, because it's quite pretty. Now the floating cloud. There was a messy border over that one, so looks a little bit on the cropped side. There we go. Now the last one is the we should probably put it in order of progression though, in all honesty, so I'm going to move this northeast country one further up. We'll do it in order of how we're going to progress through them in the game. But it's not like exact, because the thing is we're probably not going to go to the salt flats until endgame, so it's not like we'll be everywhere in this region in episode 3. But we are sort of going to the mountains. That's kind of the episodic plan after the capital, the story progression, and then we go into the southwest after that, and then finally real end game is the Cloud City and the surrounding area. Okay, so now I've done that's helped just summarize, simplify the areas, so we don't have to keep switching to the map now. We're all in one space. I would love everything to be on one page, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get them on one page. So what I'm actually going to do is make a page break. So we got one for each page. Cool. Now, first step to coming up with the names then, folks. So, we'll do each of them. We'll think of a good little list of 3 descriptive phrases for each. So, with that in mind, I'm going to title this as I'm going to put that in front of each of them, just in front of each of them, just so anyone coming into stream actually knows the relevance to this, the context of what we're doing. So we got 4 countries now, 2 on the west and 2 on the east. And kind of, I think it works because 4's a great number. It works nicely with the different races, and it also just separates things a bit better instead of having two masses of land. Okay, so, and to me it's always made sense that the Cloud City is its own separate country as well, to the west side and the urban zone. Right, so finally we'll get to it. There's been a lot of build up with this naming thing, a lot of prep work, should I say, but we're finally getting there. So step 1 is going to be for us to think of a short phrase of no more than a few words, because we don't want too many words, because it's going to be really hard to like mush them into one word if we have too many. That sums up the area and the people. That sums up the area is fine. Cool. Don't know what's gone up, what's happened with the gap in the text. Looks a bit weird. A bit too much gap going on here. Clear formatting. Just leave it. Let's leave it as messy. Take forever otherwise. So that's step 1. And step 2 is going to be, we're not doing step 2 yet, of course, but I'm going to just get it down anyway so we know. Simplify and evolve the phrase. And there might be a step 3 as well, but we'll do that after. So we'll get the bullet points there, just so we have them ready. And if anyone in chat has any, feel free to say. We'll just be staring at the pictures and figuring out how we can sum it all up. So I'm going to put that in each. So we're going to go through each of them one at a time. Right, are we ready? I'm excited. We certainly still have quite a bit of time left to do this. All right, so let's read what Eld said. So, just a thought, Highlands dry water, interesting. Are we just starting with descriptions and then converting those into names? Are we accounting for the race of the original colonists at the description stage, or are we keeping that for the next step? Because the descriptive differences from Kitsune versus Drake for, say, the Taiga would be very different. Bright versus dying of cold. Yeah, so that's what do you reckon could be most effective? Because what I was thinking, I mean, yeah, people might have a different technique to me, but what I was thinking was not think of the people just yet, which is why I haven't mentioned, otherwise I'd have said and the people here, but I'm thinking purely think of the let's say the a regional description of the area. / history, like for example with the other players being very arty and like for free people who want to escape and have a life of escapism and luxury. I mean, that kind of goes into being about the people, but in a sort of less specific way. It's not about the race that lived there first. It's about the people and their way of life. And that's fine too if we want to describe in a short phrase, thinking of that sort of thing. But for example, with the elves here, I'm thinking that is something we're going to consider when we evolve the phrase. That's what I was thinking of doing it anyway. Like, for example, when we did this, we came up with land of the free as the phrase, as a test. Then we went on to combine the start of land and free into these. And then we added ra at the end and at the start, because that area's draw, it's about the draw, so we added the ra for the draw to come up with these names. And you know, that none of them might work, but that was a way we could do it, and some of the phrases could work way better even than that for that one, but it's a way to do it. Like, say for a free land was the name, you know, just looking at it, but it's not obvious on first glance that you've got the free, because it was the land of the free, the land for land and ra for dragon. But it's not like as subtle as a brick, you know, where it's just, oh my god, that is so dragon-like, and oh, that is, it's more subtle than that. It takes a bit of deeper thought to figure out how that name came to be, which is a technique I like. It's not so in your face, oh my god, dragons, you know, it's a bit, and that's why I think this technique works well, because it's believable that it could have evolved into that as over the centuries. It could have been called by that once upon a time by the original citizens, and then you get people wanting to simplify it, like land, it could have been free land instead of land of the free. They could have moved on to calling it free land, then free land, because some people might have not pronounced their D's who lived there, and then it goes on to, I mean, that's one way, but maybe it's also a way to consider that as well with the ra first, so it's more believable why that would have randomly been added. It's up for consideration. But it was a way to sort of make it look a bit more elegant, because they can be a bit plain when it's just that, but with the ra in front, it kind of makes it a little bit more interesting. So my idea was to add the ra or the sa or the da on the end or the start of the word, or the middle at the end, but we could do it first if there's a way to do it. Let's read chat. So yeah, that would be describing the history, not opinions and biases. Yeah. And well, you have to consider that races might not all name their countries by the same naming conventions. One could have named their country like that, but another country could have named it after a great hero, or ancient being like the dragon could have named their country after a great ancient dragon. Yeah, so that's something like, you know, so it's a difficult one, because at the moment it does feel like we're just randomly sticking the ra, sa or da, etc. at the end, just for like making it a bit prettier and exotic sounding. But maybe there's a more clever way, a more smarter way to approach it, because I think it's good that we're considering this. I think it's worth inserting it somewhere to give it that little historical meaning. But it's thinking of the most effective method to do that, because I'm still learning when it comes to this naming technique. It's only something I've slowly started to learn about recently, so I'm looking for you guys for some insight too, for ideas of how we could approach it. I think the coming up with the descriptive phrase is a really good starting point, and then doing the word mushing and to simplify and evolve it. But there might be another way to sort of approach inserting the SAR in, who knows. Maybe we have to think about what part of history is important to each race. And let's see, the Fae are the first to break away from the elves, and they're very rebellious in general, so their land could be named something like Bid for Independence, Bid Dependence, Bimpid. Very clever, Matt. So first of all, we can start thinking of descriptive phrases now, because I see that chat have already come up with some, and there's a few further up that I have to scroll up a bit, because there was some that was mentioned before. But if we start having any ideas as well for how we can add the racial connection, like these particular lines about the Sa, the Dar, the Ra, the Ka, then feel free to bring that up too, because I'm a bit of a blank on how to insert these words in right now, other than just adding the Sa at the end of the country name or at the beginning. That's like my only idea right now. But I think, a good starting point will be to add some regional descriptions. So, Met said, so you're mentioning the Fae in particular, so let's scroll down to them. Here they are. So, bid for independence. It's a good starting point, that one is. So what I'm going to do, if you actually do evolve it, folks, I'm going to add that in too. I hope I'm spelling these right, because we're going to get the underlying spell checker coming up for sure with some of these. So let me know if I do a typo. Bin dep, I've already done. So bin dep pen. Dance, it's dance, not there we go. So then bin hinder. It's going to be very important not to make any spelling mistakes on these ones. So that's a good, is it different for you guys across the pond to us British, because we're getting the E as a correction for that. I'm not sure if there's a difference with the spelling. Well, that's something to think about. I'm not sure. Okay, so I think a clever way would require us coming up with a nickname for home for at least one of the races. Maybe Den instead of Car. The one reason I think the Car, like the Ra, these 2-letter words that end in A, and one thing I like about them is I'm pretty confident that they'll sound good at the end of a country name we come up with, because usually countries that end in A or something do, or have that vowel in there as the second letter if we put it at the start. It just purely for aesthetic's sake, I guess. I think it's quite elegant sounding and could add a sort of nice sound to the country name. But that's just one technique. I don't think we really need to add the race signifiers to the name, if it's purely, like I said, for aesthetics, like when we don't have to, because it's not like it's a rule that, oh my god, every place has to have Car or Dar at the end. It might seem a bit forced and unnatural. I guess if we can come up with a descriptive phrase that sounds really nice when we mush it together, then there wouldn't be any need. Because these ones from the land of the free are a little bit plain, maybe a little, not a bit, they're nothing special sounding perhaps, but that was only one description. We could come up with a few, and then you never know, there could be something really cool that comes out from them. So it was worth me bringing this up, because I didn't want that to be something missed and forgotten about, because you never know, it could have worked or could still work, and So it's there just simply as a reminder that each of these regions do have people that it might help with us coming up with some background history. Maybe you're right, folks, it's not so much about the name but their history, and Met already has sort of stated that with the whole independence thing, and we're sort of getting somewhere here. So let's carry on, and when we come up with the phrases, see what we can come up with. So when coming up with the phrases, I suppose it could be anything to do with the regional area or the history. So I'll put that there. So I'm going to just copy and paste that for all of them because we want to have that as a reminder. There we go. So we would need multiples for each race to avoid dull overlap, but it could cover some variations. Dar nest for lizard folks, car den for kitsune, and dar kara would happen naturally for place named after an individual family. Yeah, I almost agree, but that they shouldn't be a hard rule. They should be there for when it makes sense, but the different races will have flavour variations. Yeah. So we'll keep it in mind for now. We'll see how our names evolve as we come up with some phrases, and you never know, a good plan could come up to us. It's a good point that you make, thinking of something a bit more specific, like a place, like, you know, a nest or a den for these races. We'll keep it in mind. If you think of that out for any of your suggestions, feel free to put some in. I can always add them. Independence is the spelling. Yeah, maybe it is that. I'll put that for now, but I will do a spell checker. It doesn't matter in the long run anyway, because BIMPID is a shortened version and it gets rid of that vowel, I think. I'm not sure if it does. Oh well. It's actually somewhat flexible. No one looks at the A spelling as wrong other than spell teachers. There will be flavour, each race has different priority. Rising for justice for the draw lands. Yeah, let's get it all in. This is fun, folks. You guys have a lot of really cool knowledge as well that I'm learning from too. So if anyone has any, I'm going to just add it all in, folks. I'm actually going to bold the suggestions. I want it to stand out more. And we'll see what we come up with. There's no limit to the ideas we have, folks, today. If we have a short list of about 20 for each, that's totally fine. And then we'll shortlist it to less until we find one that's our favourite, and we put up a poll if necessary. Okay, so I might have to scroll up in a sec, because I remember there was some that was mentioned earlier on. We keep calling the city a haven. It's for art, so it could be art haven or creator's heaven if it was an open key. Yeah, so let's get back down to the okay, here we go. So in fact, it's probably going to be easier just to, hang on, instead of making a separate bullet point list, I'm just going to do it this way. I'll use the arrow. So it's going to be easier to do it this way, because there's it's a bit redundant to have this separate list. I'll just stick step 2 there. Right, so we got all that. Cool, so I'm just adding Mets from earlier because I remember he mentioned that, so I thought I'd insert it there. If I've missed any others, let me know, folks. There was another one that was mentioned. I might miss a few though, I'm only human. So, but any that I notice I'll fit in. Met mentioned Elves Garden for this area because the elves populated it quite heavily. Maybe we could list whether to describe the people or their beliefs. I don't think yeah, that's I think that's a good plan. We can do that. So when we come up with this history, beliefs, I keep changing this step 1 description, and that means I've got to change it for all of them. Because it's good to know that, so that we can stay on topic. Okay, so you guys have been saying a lot, I see, so I apologise for the delay. Let me catch up and we'll get it all in. It's awesome though that you're coming up with stuff. You can swap words. The sources are friend, land of the free, free nest, free den, depending on race. Then modify that from the free, yeah. So, yeah, that's an idea too. Den of the free, nest of the free, because land is a very boring word anyway, so I wasn't totally convinced land of the free was the best description, but let's get it in anyway. So land of the free, then modify that to friend. I can't even pronounce that one. Freedon. Freedon's cool. That makes sense, because Freeden, it would totally evolve over time to Freedon, because people usually simplify the word who live there. The way language goes, they just want to say the word in the easiest way. Vowels get taken away and changed. So I'm going to just get that in. So for the elves, I think that whatever their nation, Van said, is based off life, serenity, and the earth, plants, and well-being of the people, based off nature. Cool, Van, if you get any thoughts. Elves Garden is the first start, which is cool because that really gives the whole green, outdoorsy nature vibe. And if there's any others, any thoughts, then we can get them in. Something that's really a really cool phrase to sum it up. Something might come to us soon. Salt flats, Met says, tend to be former lakes, so maybe the northeast could be named after a lake or the bay that dried up. Cool idea. Because yeah, there's a lot of scenic stuff going on in the northeast. It's cold, it's probably a lot more less populated, but there's probably the odd snow settlement there as well. So something that evokes coldness, and like you say, dried up lakes could work totally. Empty lake. Empty lake is a starting point. With any interesting cultural elements, like how some races have more of a focus on the community than individuals, then that also changes specific words, so we've got a lot of flexibility when it comes time to start mangling the descriptions. Really call out, you know your stuff. Since they've placed your side as a reflection of heroism for the race, I'd have to think that the owls have a disposition towards a name that might reflect qualities of nature and life. Alright, so I'm trying to get my brain into gear to see if I can come up with some good nature sounding Tree of Life. Just because, you know, the Everbloom Forest tree, that whole monument is very sort of, probably was pretty huge, a very big landmark back in the day. So just to something like that, but there could be better. Like when we list these words, there could be a lot of very mediocre phrases to shift you through, but it could help bounce new ideas off it if the other, right? And we could come up with some cool ones. So I'd say step one, make us focus on descriptions for the environment, then we can break those into smaller regions for listing history references, then we can get into the famous events, people, and once we have those lists we can discuss original names and then current race renamings. Alright, so we're doing the right step first then, looking at what else it reckons. But more about descriptions than history or saying is the smart thing to do. What do you mean by break those into smaller regions? I'm just trying to get a bit of clarity, because obviously we've got to be on the right track when doing this, and me of all people has to. Maybe for the face, seeing that Halidar was a free-spirited individual that even pushed Ursula on the path to save folks on a play, an independent spark name seems to really fit the Fae. Yeah, so I think Met was really on to something when they suggested the independence particular word for this one, because that not all round just fits the Fae. It also fits well, it could also fit this other region here, because the whole art haven has a bit of independence to it, but mainly for different reasons. It's more about escapism and passion and dreams. Dreams is a good word. Obviously we need it more descriptive than just that. Follower of dreams, something to that degree. Well, and yes, this is more about just pride and the independence and wanting to, yeah, the fact they're free-spirited. Like the Owls will want to name a place Owl's Garden, but Greenhome might be hard to pronounce for lizard folk, so they changed the name to Elfgarten. Yeah, because that is a cool, like when you change vowels or other letters, you can do that to come up with some really cool names. That was a cool technique that I read about as well when researching this. And no need to apologise today for the delay focusing, yeah. Friends to, yeah, some of the pronunciation ones that are hard to pronounce I could see evolving as well in themselves, because I can't even pronounce them. So and maybe the Southwest was named for a place of toil and work, since before the Dracate became free they were probably enslaved for some time. Right, let's get on the Southwest just so I can remember what area that was. Here we go. Probably enslaved sometime. Yeah, so yeah, thinking of a word to sum that up. I mean, it would definitely contradict it being land of the free or follower of dreams, but that's another thing to consider. So thinking maybe more Yora's garden, but I forgot his name. Oh yeah, Yorasar. And the interesting thing about actually having his name as the phrase, the description, is that we can still bring that Tsar into the country name, you know, in a way, when we start to evolve and shorten it. But it's got more purpose because it actually was named after someone. It wasn't just thrown in just for the sake of it. It was after a person. So it gives it more of a solid sort of story then for why it has the Tsar in it. Well, wait, it's Halliday that was that the tree is named after, so it's Halliday's wood. Well, Halliday is the fae that is part of the reason why the Sky City was raised. So that's something to consider for even for this place, the raised city. I've just stuck that in just because it's good to just put anything we think of in there that describes the area. Yeah, so Halliday's nothing really to do with the forest, but he is to do with the Cloud City, so if there's a way to sort of fit that in with the Cloud City, then yeah. The current forest is already called Everbloom, but Hallowed Woods could be the title of a large region if it used to be all forest. Well, it could potentially be a forest in this region if we want to go for the Halliday sort of reference, because then it would make sense because his monument's here and that, so yeah. We could even, I mean, we're thinking that's going into naming towns and regions and smaller areas then, which I definitely think we're going to obviously do eventually, and we'll use this same technique when we do name smaller zones. But yeah, this is going to be specifically for the country name. But we'll keep that in mind for sure. I'll definitely think if we ever have a forest in the northwest country, we could totally call it Hallie's Woods or something inspired by Halliday. I think that would be cool. Here's an idea: Sparvel for the Fae, Spark of the Valiant, or Sparvy. Awesome. So we're on the Fae section. So Spark of the Valiant would become Spar Valley. which is great because it's a really cool and easy thing to do, just to take the first part of the word and do a word mush. Sometimes it doesn't always work out, but sometimes you can get something really cool sounding. You can even turn it around so it's Valley Spa as well. Like have the Valley Spa first. Valiant Spark. Can put that on a separate one. Yeah, let's get more like that. If we can think of some really, really cool, very awesome descriptions and imagery and fancy words. Spark, Valiant, all really cool words. You never know, we could get some really interesting, elegant country names from doing a technique like that. I mean, I think Ald was thinking of something more complicated. I'm still trying to take in what you said earlier, because there was definitely something really intriguing about what you said, but my brain could only process so much. And I mean, I'm very intrigued by your naming technique for sure, but it definitely seems more complicated than coming at what I've got here about just coming up with a description and then just mushing the words. I got them switched around. Smaller regions, cities, for example, I live in a swamp region that covers a huge area that's partially inside 2 states with different cultures, and then inside my state there are 3 cultural areas: French, German, Spanish, and then inside those regions there are rural city areas with separate cultures as well. People in New Orleans celebrate different historical events to Baton Rouge, and Golden Meadows, part of the long chain of sleepy fishing villages along one of the major waterways that can access the Gulf with no actual historical significance. Interesting. And you know, it would be funny if Yorasa's name evolved like that. People make him so great when he really just wanted to be left alone as God. And that's quite an interesting story. And it's cool that we're thinking of this, because it's going to help flesh out the legends more as well too, because it could give us new ideas for what they were like. And how ironic would it be that he's become this huge symbol? He's got this tree where his face is literally inside it or on it, and he's got a whole country named after him, when really he was just a humble guy who just was passionate about healing and herbalism. But I think that could work. I could totally see us going a route here where we bring the Tsar in for the owls with this country, because we already have Yorasa. We've already named one of these great elves, so we've already got a historical person here. It would be a lot harder if we didn't have that person named, but because we've already thought of him from when we made our pantheon. It's already there. So something like that. I mean, I'm just randomly thinking. Yorsaga could work. Something, that flows. Like, you want your countries to, each of the little words that we're shortening here, like for that one, for example, we're taking the yor, the sa, and the ga. You want each of those little shortened words to just flow as you say them, and then I think you could, if it does that, they sound nice together, then you've got a decent country name. Oh my gosh, I've just realised you guys have said way more. I didn't notice because my Streamlabs chat was just stuck. So I'm going to scroll down and see what you've said. have a small place called Gardener's Rest. It's actually a horrible in-hospital rocky area on the side of the mountain where Yorsa went to hide from people. Interesting. But yeah, I mean, I'm not putting down smaller place names right this minute or this stream, but just so you know, folks, if any of you today do mention cool little place names, like, you know, how we've got Everbloom Forest and Lightfall, for example, these little small settlements and small regions, I'm going to make a notepad file so I can keep track of any that you guys mentioned, because you Eld and Met, and there's already a few that have been suggested this stream, and I wouldn't want to let those slip aside and go missed. Even just because we focus on the actual countries right now doesn't mean I don't have to still think about them. Okay, so if you were alive, he'd be throwing his hands in the air in frustration. Probably skull people. The Feylands could be. It's good that we're thinking of them now. I think this is a really handy stream, just because it's really helping flesh out the history a little bit more than before. The Feylands could be Farco, since it's opposite to where the elves started out. Okay, this is really cool, folks. And we're only just at the very beginning here of coming up with names, and we will be carrying on with this on Thursday's stream, because I think we've only just touched the surface on what we could come up with. I mean, there's potential. I've noticed we're starting to shorten a few of these descriptions, and there's potential with some of the country names we've come up with, but I think ideally I'd like us to have at least several or a few, like between 4 and 8 suggestions per country, and then we can do a vote and share our thoughts on which ones we like. I think a poll would be great for something like this on the Discord, in the polls channel, when we have a shortlist, because then we'll truly know which country names just have a really nice ring to them, maybe. But we don't have to have as much as 8. We could just have 3 or 4 or 2 if we want, if we're really set on just a couple. But as long as there's plenty of choice there, and we'll do that next stream. I think we'll come up with a decent amount by then. So and that's an interesting point you've made, that it's literally the opposite to where the elves are based. And it's interesting that the Fae and the elves sort of were living so apart from each other, when really those, I suppose you could say, those two races would get along in harmony, really. But they sort of wanted to live opposite ends of the world from each other for a time, so it seems, which is interesting. Maybe they just wanted to spread their influence, or maybe there was a bigger issue going on there. Maybe they had a falling out. And I think Valiant and Spark really fit the Fate, and Haladar, yeah, it's a good one. So I think Spar Valley or Valley Spar, it would probably make the poll when we do it on Thursday. I think they're strong enough to go on the poll. Even the Independence one, I think there's some room for an interesting one there, because the Independence is an interesting word to go with. And we a bit bare on any of the others. Follower of Dream, let's just have a mess around and see what we come up with. But I'm going to read what you guys have said first. I'll do that when chat gets a bit calmer. Yorsar was totally the reluctant hero. Haladar is the friend pushing him out the doors. Yorsar is holding the friend. That is everyday. Yeah, those two definitely, like, because we linked them in, didn't we, with Haladar raising the city and Yorsar curing the plague, and they lived in the same age, so their sort of great deeds influenced each other. And that was the reason why he raised it in the first place, because of the plague, right, if I'm correct. So it definitely gives us this early idea that the Fictionals really get on well and really live together, and well, at least those two anyway. But there's definitely room for further development on perhaps why the elves decide to move away from that corner of the world into the opposite corner. I mean, for Yorosar, maybe you just wanted a life of peace and quiet and wanted to be with the forest and learn his herbalism. This reminds me of a short story about who are the bigger fireballs. Interesting. Our ministers follow. And the northeast has the tower and the animal people, so maybe it's named after a big event that hid the moon. Oh yeah, good that you mentioned the tower, Matt, actually. So the tower, let's go back to the northeast. Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the northeast because it looks like we're neglecting it a little bit. This was where the tower, the source of light, was built. Let's not forget that, the monument here. So let's remember the monuments. I think, in fact, it's probably good if it's probably good if we note that down for each of the countries, just so we keep that in mind. So for the southeast country, it's obviously the Lakefall, the Lakefall tree, the Saint Like tree, Yorosar's tree. And for this one, we know it's the Tower of Light. So I don't know if we're going to call it that when it comes down to it, but that's a good way to sum it up. And so, in fact, we'll actually put that one down as a description as well. But we could go further and come up with more ideas from that as well. Could name it after the moon somehow. Maybe that was a place that was deeply affected by the moon's corruption. Or maybe the whole world was. I think the reason why we built the tower here was because of, it was the highest point in the world. So it was the perfect place to build a magical tower to give us the light source. But I'm glad you mentioned that because it actually slipped my mind, the monument thing. And I think the monument, because coming up with these descriptions, it's so landmark and nature focused. We gotta keep in mind the monuments to help us come up with some descriptions here. So for the Dra landmark in the desert, we know that it's the Justice Dra legend. There is the worship legend here, but we don't yet know what that monument is. We didn't actually decide because we haven't really developed that legend. I think that was one of the most least developed in our pantheon. But we know they're a Dra, female Dra. We know they stand for justice and equality, and they obviously had a big influence. We thought maybe they worked with the Walker to help bring equality to the East, which led on to the government and monarchy being a meritocracy, rather than hereditary, like in the monarchy by birth. So that's really all we know at this point in time about the influence they had. So the landmark is a question mark. One thing I know about the landmarks that I think we all sort of thought was that it's cool that they're all different. They're not all statues. They're not all trees. They're all different. We've got a building. We've got a building. We've got a tree. We've got a tower. We've got a statue. you know, they're all different objects, they're all different landmarks, so it keeps it a bit more interesting rather than have every single one just be a statue or something. Because the Haladar one is a statue, which makes sense because Haladar was he was worshipped. People adored him for what he did. He raised that city, and a statue was made of him, you know. So having his statue be in the centre of the Cloud City seemed like this very appropriate thing for what their monument could be. We know that the safe haven is the actual building, that's the landmark there, and whether it's what state it's in the present day, I don't know. It's a criminal city now, so maybe that landmark was sort of slightly, it's not the safe haven it used to be. There could be a bit of destruction there, but yeah, that city is going to be an interesting one because we have the chance to reform it if we want it to. We want to make people realise what it used to be and the potential it has. And I think we would just try and work focus on setting up the document before we start official brainstorming. The light thing, that's an interesting one. That's a nice descriptive it's a very descriptive piece of imagery, that, for the Tower of Light, and it does fit with finger because Towers of Light sort of are a fit, almost like a finger with the point, so I like that. Okay, so if there are lingering effects at the super beings from before the owl, some places might be named after them, maybe. I mean, we could go way back, right? I mean, starting from as early as Eurosar makes sense, I suppose, because that's what the history that we're most familiar with. But, you know, there's every chance that there's further back history than that. And there could be remnants of it. I think that could be interesting if there's remnants of history, because this naming thing, I mean, we do in the countries at the moment, but there's going to be so many different things that are named, like smaller regions within the country, little areas within the region. It'll be endless. We can come up with so many potentially, and I think it's different. Like, smaller place names usually are more than one word, and like you know, Everbloom Forest and something's farm, something's hill, and Winding Way and Silent, you know, they've all got usually longer, but country names are usually summed up in one word, aren't they? So I think when we come up with country names, it's going to be something that we merge this, squish, word mash these together to form a singular word that sounds really cool and elegant and flows nicely, and I think that'd be really cool. I think Yorsaga was a decent attempt for a country name, and it references Yorasar and the gardens, so that could make the poll, but we could even have more, so that's just a starting point. I have an idea for the landmark of the Dra. Why not do something completely different? The landmark for the Dra is a hidden landmark because it is a live ancient dragon. Oh, interesting. And that dragon may be sleeping, thus an ancient landmark. It's an interesting direction to go. I'm all for doing something a bit outside the box with that to add a bit of intrigue to that zone, because we will be obviously going there in a future episode, so to have an interesting bit of surprise in history there could be interesting. We also will have a playable character in Tristan, who is a dragon tamer, and he is seeking dragons to tame, so that could also tie into something with him, you know, so there's potential there. And of course there would need to be a history about it, and it might go, yeah, you just said it, Brad, just as I did. What a coincidence, because as soon as you mentioned that, I thought of Tristan. who I certainly think we would meet in the snowy area, because his aesthetic, his ice blue hair and his backstory sounds very wintry to me. The fact he's searching for an ice dragon as well in his bio, we're totally gonna encounter him in the northeast country somewhere. So because that's gonna come earlier than the desert, makes sense in progression, because he'd have already joined the party and he'll be with us when we go here, and it could lead on to a plot point or side quest or potential, character story for him there. So I'm going to put in brackets a live ancient sleeping dragon, because that's really interesting. I think we need to develop that Dra Legends backstory a bit more, so we can really link that landmark and that Dra together really great, so it all makes sense. No, we've not got any plot holes, but I think it's a really intriguing landmark to have, a moving landmark, and it's different to all the others, because I was totally all for having all the landmarks be different, and I think we got them all now. The 6 legends, so we've got Yorosar's tree, we've got the Tower of Light for Lusa, we've got the statue for Haladar, we've got the safe haven for the Kit, we've got the potential living dragon, ancient dragon for the Dra. What was the 6th legend? The Walker. So the Walker is the only landmark. Did we talk about what that was? The Walker is based in the capital / farmlands, because they were the one that influenced the change of how the government is run in the present day or in recent history. So that Walker has had an influence. They were all about, you shouldn't be born into power, you should earn it from skill and talent, and then it developed into an art competition for who becomes king. So it'd be great if that landmark of that Walker would link into their beliefs, as well as the capital aesthetic and stuff. We don't want it sticking out like a sore thumb, I guess, there. So something for the Walker. We don't have to think just yet, but something to keep in mind, because that's the only one we haven't thought of a landmark for yet. Yeah, exactly. The history. If at some point, it doesn't have to be anytime soon because it's a future episode, but even if we feel like doing it, if inspiration strikes us, we could have a think about how Tristan, the Dra legend, and that dragon landmark could all tie in together to make a really interesting story. And that could be a pivotal point in Tristan's career where he learns something more about dragons, things he never expected. Yeah, I think interesting to keep these things in mind for when it all happens. Right, folks, so we are coming towards the end of the stream. Very sadly, I've been having a blast and I could go on for longer, but this is a double stream, as in what we're doing today it'll be a continuation. The next stream, it'll be part 2 of coming up with the country names. I think I felt deep down that this was going to be a double stream, because there was so much history and thoughts to unpack with this before jumping into thinking of the names. But because we've really discussed that today, we've talked about our naming technique and how we're going to approach it, all we need to do next stream is come up with more descriptions. And if you come up with more descriptions off stream, that's brilliant, folks. If you come up with any more between now and next stream, just pop it in the Discord, and I'll add it to this list. And even if you come up with how to simplify that description, even better. And then we'll, hopefully all going well, halfway into next stream at least, we'll have several really awesome sounding country names, at least more than 2 for each, I'm hoping. And we can potentially put up a poll so we can have a vote on the best and most awesome country name for each of the 4. And I think that'll be really exciting then, because we'll officially have actual names for the countries instead of just calling them East and West Side. And Al said, moving landmarks are a thing. For example, the Old Man of the Lake is a moving landmark in Oregon's Great Lake, and it's a several 100-year-old tree trunk floating vertically in the water that will stick out by staplers. I'm going to research that out, because that's really interesting, because I've not heard of that one, and it might be a good reference and inspiration for the dragon, who knows. It's really interesting. I think I like Valley Spa. It is a nice one. Let's go back to that one, because you come up with Spa Valley, didn't you, from Spark of the Valley? And I was like, I wonder what that would sound like the other way around, Valley Spa. And that flows even nicer. Valley Spa just has like this very memorable flow to it. So yeah, I think that's really cool that we get in there. And I think it sounds elegant and suits the whole aesthetic and vibe and feel of this country. You know, like, because we really do want to make sure that the name suits the country. It gives off that sort of, and I think it does. I like that it begins with a V, because I think the words that begin with V are unique. You don't really hear words that begin with V very often, and it gives this sort of exotic, mysterious sort of feel to that word, so I like it. I'm inclined to want all the countries to sound quite different, like for them to start with different letters so that we don't get confused, they're not too similar sounding. Because if, say, we got Valley Spa and then we've got Valley Gar, then it'd be like, that's too similar. So yeah, that's, having them be distinct is great. So and I think this was a good starting point. Don't know if like we're in love with your cigar just yet, but it's a good starting point, and it could help inspire other similar words, because I think we do like the idea of Yorosar being part of the how this country's named after him, because it gives him even more of an epic sort of ness, doesn't it? And it also works well with what Van said when they said that, oh, Yorosar would probably be like really, like, he didn't want that. He never wanted to be actually named as like this big a deal. He was just a humble guy. So that sort of ironic twist to, you know, the history and who he was before is very cool. So I'm all for having one of the, whatever this country be highly influenced by his name. So that's something to keep in mind. Whether we go for it being the garden one, I don't know. We could have another word, Yorosar, something else, if we're not sold on the one ending in gar, if we want to try a few different combinations. But it's not bad. The whole gar thing has a very country sort of sound to it. I think that word sounds like a country, so it could totally work. What about this one? We only had a couple of ideas for this one at the moment. We got freedom, which wasn't too bad. It might be a bit too unsubtle and similar sounding to freedom. We might want to make it a little bit less obvious, but it's a starting point. We still need to try a few combinations from these phrases and see what we come up with there. And what was the other one? We got the tower, like we haven't even tried doing any simplifying and evolving with them yet either. So that's going to continue on into next stream, folks. I I'm amused though by the elf stuff though. Yeah, it's getting really fun. Verily awesome. So where was that one, Dave? I want to make sure I'm on the right one because there's so many ones. But that's a nice, pretty one. Hey, Valispar is a paint brand. Maybe swap the I for a Y. Valispar. Oh, is it a paint brand? That's really funny. Valspar, yeah. Sometimes that happens, doesn't it? Ends up being something else. I think the spelling is Valspar. There is an I in it, yeah, because it's inspired by the word valiant. So, but you know, it's not uncommon or out of the ordinary that sometimes new citizens that move to countries change vowels and other letters to another vowel. But we'll think about that more next time. I was just using more V words. Yeah, more V words. That could even be the name of the Cloud City for all we know, Dave. Who knows? Because this is going to eventually go on to us naming the smaller regions and the cities and the villages and dungeons as well, eventually at some point in time. But that's, you know, we might keep it very far in the future when we start thinking of that, but we'll certainly be exciting. The Great Mines. Where's the desert area again? Here we go. That would be cool. Either a specific dragon or the last safe nesting place. Yes. So folks, I'm going to put things to a close now. I do have to rush off because I'm finishing late again. When I should have finished at 6. So I'm going to have to rush off. But we're going to carry on with this Thursday. And hopefully by the end of Thursday's stream, we'll have come up with the official names. Be fun, folks. But remember what I said, if you come up with any between now and next stream, if you get any cool ideas for words or shortened evolved versions of them for the actual name we can go with, feel free to say and I'll add it to the document. And if any of you say any now in stream, I'll add it later as well myself. So take care, everybody. I appreciate you all. Thanks for being awesome and coming up with some really cool ideas. Have a good week and I'll see you on Thursday.